A very warm welcome to my wonderful guest today, the founder and president of ActionSA, Mr. Mashaba, who is one of the doyens of black business, defying apartheid system and building a successful, profitable industrial cosmetic business in 1985. Can you believe it? Thank you for joining us today. How are you doing, Mr. Mashaba?
Good afternoon, Leletu, and good afternoon to your listeners and viewers. And thank you for this great opportunity to engage with you and for the warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mashaba. We'd like to know more about you. And I know you were born and raised in Hammanskraal. And before I came here, I did a bit of investigation. Hammanskraal was named after Afrikaner farmer whose name was Haman, and he had a kraal. That's why it's Hammanskraal. Can you tell us about your upbringing in Hammanskraal and what challenges did you face and how did it shape your future?
Well, what happened is when I actually became aware of my existence, that's when I was, 5, 6. And all of a sudden, I find myself surrounded by my sisters, and I ask, what happened? Where's my dad? And only to be told that, your dad died when you were 2 years old. What about my mom? My mom says, no, she's working as a domestic worker in Johannesburg, looking after white children and cleaning white homes. So I grew up in that environment, and I was really very unfortunate in the sense that my father died before building my mother's house. So, from the day I was born until I actually started Black Like Me in 1985 in Garankuwa, and then a new housing development was started in Garankuwa in Unit 8, great suburb. I bought a house for the first time in my life. At that time, I was 25, 26. First time in my life to live in a home I could call home. And then 2 months later, there was a similar development in Temba in Hammanskraal, and I bought my mother a similar type of house. So at least my mother, the last 10 years of her life, because she died at 74. And when I bought a house with the title deed, she was 64. So my father, for some reason, just kept on making babies without ensuring that there's accommodation for them.
Yes. and to trace back your lineage, right? The Mashaba family, where do they come from?
Well, unless obviously my grandfather has got his history wrong, he says my grandfather, who was born in one of the farms in on the north of Pretoria, and then got married in Hammanskraal. That's how he ended up getting married. Ending up living in Hammanskraal. He says his father came from Mozambique when he was 16, 17, and ended up working in the farm, marrying 3 wives, and he was from the first wife. It was actually 4 of them, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And then the other wife's kids, I don't know obviously really what happened. So if that is true, that my grandfather's tracing of history, it's true that my great-grandfather came from Mozambique somewhere in the 1800s.
And there was the migration at the time, because I remember Soshangana migrated to Mozambique and started an empire there, which was the Gaza Kingdom. I'm sure it had to do with something like that.
Actually, my great grandfather, the one I'm named after, something. Yes. One of my names is something.
Okay, something.
The guy that my great grandfather, who, if it's true what my grandfather told me, that he came to South Africa when he was 16, 17, somewhere there. He got buried actually in the farm. And then only, I think about 5 years ago, we exhumed his body. He's now buried in
mm,
Garangkua,
mm,
and my grandfather and my father are buried in Haramutsi. That's where I was.
mm.
My father was also born in Haramutsi.
Yes, yes. Growing up in the townships in the 80s, Mr. Mashaba, black entrepreneurs or either families that were in business were mostly spaza shop owners. Some owned taxis. There was quite a whole lot of underground weed distribution as well at that time. But you took it to another level. You took it to another level. How did you start cosmetic industrial business in 1985 in the heart of a repressive system like apartheid? Even going into manufacturing.
Well, let you. It's obviously really quite something quite fascinating. That's why over the years in business, my story has attracted business schools literally from all over the world. Um, People, business schools used to invite me and give me recognition. What happened, I think it dates back to the day I was born on the 26th of August, 1959. I was
Mm,
born on the 26th of August, 1959 in Haramutsi. And for
mm,
some reason, my grandfather happened to have been home. My grandfather was working for the Harangua municipality as a security guard at the gate. What
mm.
we used to call Machingilan, the guy who
Yeah.
stands at the gate, every car or person coming in and out, so
Mm,
he used to come home every month by bicycle from Harangua to Amanskral. And those days we had no proper roads. And then
yeah.
December, that's when he will be home the whole month. So I don't know, probably the 26th must have been towards the end of the month because he happened to have been
Mm,
home. And I grew up actually with this whole aura of being told by my grandfather and the entire community that the day I was born, this old man
mm,
went around the entire community, literally from house to house, telling
mm.
everyone about high men being born. Someone who's going to
Oh,
change, someone who's going to change the world. Whereas
yeah.
my parents called me Samtseu Philip. Samtseu
Mm,
being named after my great grandfather, and then
mm,
Philip after one of my mothers from my mother's side, a pastor from the Lutheran Church. So those
mm.
are the two names that were on my birth certificate. When I turned 16, even in my ID, I still got that brown reference book.
Uh,
There's no Hyman,
oh,
there's no
boss.
M,
Mm,
because it was not my official name. But
mm,
unfortunately, it turned out as I was growing, everyone in the community, including my parents, called me Hyman. But then
mm,
this old man, every month when he came home, he would always spend time with me. He will actually, as he entered the village with a bicycle, everyone
mm,
will know that he's around and is looking for me. Uh,
mm,
and the whole weekend when he's home, he'll be home on a Friday and then leave Monday morning while we're still sleeping, going back, cycling back to Harankua. So the whole
mm,
weekend, he'll make sure that he spends as much time as possible with me. And I'm actually enjoying the fruits of his wisdom. But
mm,
I can tell you, growing up, more especially when I turned 14, 15, when you become a teenager, I used to
uh,
despise my grandfather that his expectations of me were unreasonable because my
mhm,
grandfather taught me the wisdom of self-reliance
mm,
and hard work and education, and always used to every time when he sees someone in the community, including himself,
mm,
instill in me that I should not be like him. I should not be like my father.
mm,
I should not be like everybody in the community. I've got to be a better human being. And he used
mm,
to say to me, instill in me to believe in myself that
mm,
God, when he created you as a human being, has given you this little brain. Use
mm,
it to navigate challenges. Don't be afraid of challenges. You have to succeed. If you are prepared to gamble, to take risk, calculated risk, there's no way that you're not going to succeed. But to make sure that you first, while you are growing up, equip yourself with the right type of education. And when I turned 15, I decided to change my name. I mean, that time, going now to high school, and people call me High Man, and it was just too much. At the time, Kaizer Motaung had just started Kaizer Chiefs. And he had a player from Namibia, Southwest Africa at the time, called Herman Blaski. So, and I used to play football at school. I mean, not at the professional level. And people used to call me Pele, And then I decided when I went to Form 1 in 1974, I got the guys to call me Herman. Because this Hyman was just too much.
The Hyman, wow. It's really prophetic. And he was going around the village saying Hyman is born today.
And I can challenge you, go to Haramutsi to go and ask to Herman. They know Hyman. They don't, So because I left the area, obviously, my family is still there, I still go there. But if you look at the people my age and the older ones, they still call me a high man. They don't call me him. Because that's what they grew up calling me.
No, that's great. That's great.
So what happens is that my grandfather died in 1978 when I was in matric. And then 1979 went to TEFLOP. I was lucky, managed to pass my matric, and then managed to go to TEFLOP in 1979. And second year of my studies, my university educational dream was shattered when the apartheid government one morning, 6 o'clock, the university surrounded by the army. We were asked to leave. It was during the days of the state of emergency with the arrest. And a month or so when they called us back, by that time I was really very angry with what transpired, because the day we were asked to leave, I mean, I did not even have a cent. I had left everything at school, and I decided I'm not going back. I'd rather look for options to leave the country and go for military training, come and disrupt people who disrupted my life, because I was an angry young man. But you know what, like my grandfather has always taught me that, you know what, God will always make a plan for you. Ended up, while waiting for context to leave the country, I worked for a salary in my life for 30 months, 2 companies.
For 30 months?
I worked for late 80, I worked for Spar Pretoria as a dispatch clerk for 7 months. And then I worked for Motani Industries for 23 months. During that time, then all of a sudden I turned 22, and my grandfather's teachings came back to haunt me, to say, Herman, you are getting old, and you can't be like everyone. The type of job you're doing, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to end up with the very same people that your grandfather said you should not. So I decided, with or without the apartheid government, I'm going to go into business. And as you can imagine, I don't come from a family, business family. I spent a big part of my youth in a tin house, 2-room tin house. We used to call it tin house. Not 2 bedrooms, 2 rooms.
2 rooms. Just 2 rooms.
So that's So the only thing I knew about money was a gambler. I used to play dice.
How dice?
Yeah, that's actually what helped me to be able to complete my matric. But my parents, my mother could not afford to take me to school, and the only way I could go to school was weekends to gamble, play dice, and I became a very popular Knoxman. So. Is the owner of the dice.
Number 1 Knoxman.
So what happens is on Saturdays, the teenagers my age On Saturdays, they'll get tickets. Those days, we did not have this current government that destroyed our rail network. Those days, we had the rail network. People used to buy weekly or monthly tickets. And then they work Monday to Friday. So Friday, we will go to the station and ask people that we know that they don't work on Saturdays to lend us their to borrow us their tickets to go to town. So a lot of my peers ended up on Saturdays and Sundays going to work in Pretoria North in the gardens, and I decided no, I'm not going to work for that. That's how I got into gambling. So the guys will wake up on Saturday morning at 4 5 in the morning, go to Pretoria North, they start coming back about 3 or so. I'll be waiting for them at the station or whatever. We start gambling.
Yes.
Before they get they've lost, some of them, they've lost their earnings. That's the only thing really I knew about money. By the time I was in matric, not especially Form 4 and Form 5, there's 1977 and 1978. Every Friday when I leave school at 2, the rush to Babelech industrial area because people used to be paid on Fridays. So go and wait for those guys. People used to earn that Babelech industrial area. It was a huge industrial area. So you go and wait for people who are working there. They earn on a weekly basis, and I'll be waiting for them with a school. You know what a school is?
Yes.
You know what a school is? and for some reason, older people used to like my school. Why? Because there was always order. In a game of dice, every 5 minutes there's a dispute. So if you've got a weak knocksman, people end up killing each other or knives because every second person will be having an okapi or some sort. So if you have a weak, so people don't want to gamble in a place where the knocksman is weak. So you need discipline and law, and you need the rule of law. You ended up older people preferring my school because there'll be the rule of law in the games. Yeah, so then fast forward to now, I'm working for Motani. At 10:22, I realized I need to succeed. That's when I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go into business. Context of leaving the country are no longer possible. I decided I must buy a car and become a commission sales rep. Then I had the wisdom of stabilizing my life. I decided before buying the car, let me get married. And then I paid Lobolo for my wife. And then 2 months later, I bought a car. 2 months later, I resigned. Everything else is history. And that was late 81. And then on the 3rd of March, 1982, my wife and I legally signed. We had a white wedding, and we signed, and we went to Devon for the first time in our lives to go and see the sea. We went on a honeymoon to Devon, and then I come back and became a commission sales rep. Then fast forward to 1983, came across a company here in Johannesburg. They had a brand called Supercare. They advertised in the paper, contacted them, and went for an interview.
Yeah, so you were at that part of the sales rep when you were the sales rep, and you were gaining commission from selling the products in the company.
Right, and then in 1983, came across a company here in Johannesburg. They had a brand called Supercare. I went for an interview there, and because they were looking for a commission sales rep.
Yes. What was your commission that time, Mr. Mashaba? The commission?
I was earning 30% of the sales.
30% was quite good.
No, it was good. Because I tell you, in 19 months, I was the top sales rep. At the time, earning 3,500 to 4,000 rands a month. 4,000 rands a month as a black guy in 1983 was a lot of money. Lots of my friends were doctors, and you remember in those days, doctors were respected in the community.
Yes.
They were earning 1,500, 1,400. I was earning 4,000 rands on commission, and I was my own boss, working at my own time, working at my own pace.
And your own pace.
I was young. But then within 19 months, I was the top sales rep in this company. And that's when I said to myself, no, you know what? I really felt vulnerable that this white guy might just decide one day to get rid of me. What's going to happen? I've built this brand. Now, I think, you know what? Let me to make a plan. I remembered my grandfather told me, use your brain to navigate your challenges. Took a chance that there was an Afrikaner guy who called Johan Green, was a chemist and was the production manager of this company. I took a chance with Joseph Mulwante. Joseph Mulwante was one of the guys I was working with as commission sales rep. I said, Joseph, let's approach this Afrikaner guy. We approached him knowing that we knew the risk. We said, obviously, if this guy doesn't buy into our dream, we are done because the owner is not going to give us a second chance. But we looked at life, and that's how I always look at life, to say, look, what if this guy accepts? Because I knew the guy was, at the time I knew the guy was earning 1,006 as a white production manager at chemist. So approached him. My proposal to him was, Johan, you can make this stuff. Joseph and I can sell it. The industry, as you can see, is growing every day. Why don't you go and make it ourselves? Johan said, guys, I'm interested. Now, the only thing he says, guys, but I don't have the money. I said, Johan, if you're interested, leave the money side to us.
The capital.
The capital. I said, give that to us. Just keep it to yourself. We will try and raise the money. We will raise the money, not try. I said, we will raise the money. I had a client called Mrs. Dube. His husband was a very popular businessman in Mabopane. He had a total garage. Was one of the biggest popular total garage in a small shopping center next to his garage. So the wife had a salon and was my client. So I then approached Mrs. Dube. I said, Mrs. Dube, is it possible you can introduce me to your husband? I've got a proposal that we make this product ourselves, you know? And and I went to Mr. Dube. I said, Joseph and I approached Mr. Dube. We said, Mr. Dube, we found a machine to legally print money.
Exactly. It's a money. But the model at the time, Mr. Mashaba, obviously, to start your manufacturing, you were more on the sales side, and then Johan had the industrial side, the skills, right? But obviously, what was your distribution model? Were you supplying directly to retailers or salons, or you had agents or sales reps across the country? How did you scale this thing?
Well, we got a 30,000 rands loan from Walter Dube. He liked the idea because I had proof. I was keeping receipts of all my commission for the 19 months and show him how this the business was growing. And he says, guys, I'm prepared to give you the money, but I'll give you this money. I need repayment over 3 years at prime plus 10%, and I want 25% share in the business. The reason why business schools in the world are interested in my business, because I'm one of the entrepreneurs in the world who received the one of the most expensive funding model. Prime plus 10, and prime in January of 1985 in South Africa was sitting at 21%. It was at the time of PW Porter with sanctions and so on.
The Rubicon speech.
So we had 3 years to repay Walter Dube. At 10 plus 10. We paid him back in 7 months. 7 months?
Yeah.
We paid him back in 7 months. And then by 1990, I built my own factory of 6,000 square meters. I started in a 200 square meter factory.
Okay.
By 1990, I had built my own factory in Mabopane, 6,000 square meters, and I was still busy with it, with expansion. Spent over 10 million rents, and I did not owe anyone a cent. I built this factory from my own resources.
Sure. And it was just coming bootstrapping from the business.
Yeah, no, self-funded.
Sure.
Self-funded. And by that time, I already had a construction company, my own construction company that started this business. I started a few years into Black Like Me. A friend of mine, Mr. Piana, the first black guy who was an engineer. That I met. I was married to one doctor at Jubilee Hospital. This guy was an engineer doing consulting work and working for these big companies. I said to him, a few years into Black Like Me, because we were really literally printing money, I encouraged that we start our own construction company. And that same company is the one that built my factory. I own 25%, but I gave Biana very soft loan. I only said, I'll give you the money to start the construction company. You pay me to back at prime.
Yes.
I get 25% share in the business. Whereas when the altar got me to pay prime plus 10 plus 25%.
Including the equity as well. So even if you finished with the debt, plus he's still remaining in the boardroom.
Walter remained in my business until I sold my business in 1997 to Colgate Palmolive.
Oh, he didn't sell. So he didn't sell this.
No, he only sold when I sold the business to Colgate Palmolive.
To Colgate. Wow, this is wow.
You wanted to know about the distribution network we used.
Yes.
Day one, we were selling directly to the salon on a cash basis.
Directly to the salon, okay?
Directly to the salon.
Through sales reps, right?
The salon will give me the order. I deliver to them. They pay me. I deliver and they pay me cash.
Okay.
And then I'll always carry extra stock with me. You know what? We'll manufacture at night with my wife. I got my wife who used to work for Sutton Sons as a junior bookkeeper. I got it. When I started, I had to ask her to leave Sutton Sons here in Sandton to come and work in Harankua, where we did not even have the furniture, at half the salary. But
at half the salary.
Yeah, but because she knew what I was up to, she joined us. So most of the time, Johan during the day will go and buy chemicals. Because you can imagine when we started in the beginning, no big company, the raw material suppliers will give us stock on credit. Because for the first year or so, we had to buy chemicals on cash basis, pay for bottles on cash basis. But obviously over time,
until the credit came. Was it a 30-day credit they gave you at first or 60-day credit?
No, 30 days. We were working at 30 days from statement. And we'll give the same terms also because we also started selling to salons directly. And then we will set up network of distributors throughout the country. Our first distributor was a guy called Tobejan in Dobsonville in Soweto.
Okay.
Tops.
And his addressable market was massive. You saw it.
It was massive. We just, from the day we started manufacturing and supplying products, we only started, our first invoice was made on the 14th of February 1985. That's the first thing we went. From that day until my factory was burned down on the 17th of November 1993, we could not meet the demands. We were always, we just could not meet.
So you had no short time even in that period. It was, your order book was full.
More than full. Just honestly supplying, I would run the factory just supplying KZN. or Eastern Cape or how. So we need to do is to make sure that my wife, because she's the one in the office all the time, make sure that when a guy gives us a big order, we'll give him in pieces so that we make sure
that you can meet the demand.
Everywhere, and at the same time, you can imagine we've got to be on the road and make sure that we block competitors. But on the other hand, we have to be concerned with the growth of the business, making sure that we build new structures and the kind of manufacturing machines that we buy. It's not, you don't just buy them from the shop, because as the business grows, you've got to really make sure that you bring in engineers to develop high-tech manufacturing facility. That's why I spent over 10 million rands on that facility. High-tech manufacturing. But no, in Mabopane. But when we started in Mabopane in 1985, we bought this 200-liter blue tanks with the hand stirrers.
Oh, with those hand stirrers, so you manually stirred.
And then a few months down the line, you buy one machine, that stairs and whatever, and now you end up buying 2,000-liter tanks. Now that's when it becomes a bit complicated. Now you need engineers. But Johan was there; he had the experience to manage this.
And how was the tariff, Mr. Mashaba, to protect the cosmetic industry at the time with the apartheid government? How was the tariffs? But obviously at that time we were a sanctioned country. Did you have any foreign competitors that were coming in?
Well, from day one, literally, I was competing with big companies. Revlon was big. TCB coming all the way from manufactured in the United States was big. There was a brand called TCB, Revlon, the Unilevers of the Unilevers. And the World of Hair, this company that I was selling for, was called the World of Hair. How these guys got into black hair? They were many years in the white hair industry, and then discovered an opportunity in the black hair market. So when I joined them, they were just about a year old or so in the black hair market. And they happened to really be the one to identify an opportunity. And I said, I'm not going to pay these guys for the black market for these guys. I'm going to pay them myself and make money myself.
And own the value chain as well.
But I did not have the technical know-how. That's how I approached Johan Kriel. And everything else is history.
Wow, what a great story, Mr. Mashaba, because I really like how you combined the skill sets as well, and built this massive industrial company, in the heart of apartheid. But I do want to come to the ActionSA manifesto. And obviously, as we are talking about business and entrepreneurship, right? You said when you began with the manifesto that you wanted to match it with the citizens' need, right? And obviously, currently, we do know that small businesses are facing a massive onslaught in South Africa. Access to capital, the access to market, and obviously the cost, the leasing costs as well that are there, and all of the cost of doing business is just expensive. How is ActionSA going to assist small businesses, not to even mention the electricity crisis that's decimating industries? How are you going to assist? Because I've seen that you're also going to be creating a fund as well, so would like to know about that.
SMMEs, particularly black business and entrepreneurship, wasn't killed by lack of business or opportunities. It was killed by the ANC communist policies. That's what actually killed black entrepreneurship in South Africa, by coming out with policies which were anti-business. Favored big business compared to small businesses. Came out with the labor union COSATU, went around closing one business after the other. It came out with this CCMA the story where, when I started Black Like Me, you can imagine, just to give an example of Section 32 of the Labor Relations Act. This piece of legislation used to be imposed, and they still do it because using their strength as ANC and COSATU and big business. They are saying if you are going to a cosmetic business today, you're expected, you must pay the same salary as Revlon or Unilever. Conditions of employment for the industry are the same, whether you're a small guy or not. I mean, that's what actually killed small business. Secondly, what killed small businesses or as businesses in the townships was the crime. Because when these guys took over, they took the eye off the ball in terms of ensuring that there's a rule of law. Let me give you the one painful example, and I've written extensively, and I used to talk about it, where, with the birth of the new South Africa, I built my business with Black entrepreneurs. I gave you an example. My first distributor was Tobejani in Thompsonville in Soweto. The first big order of Black Like Me, hardly 6 months into business, the first big order was a guy in Mdantsane called Andy Lejamela. Andy Lejamela, 30,000 rands order was the biggest order we've ever received. 30,000. Wow. You couldn't really believe a guy give it. We're hardly 6 months into the market. The guy gave us 30,000 rands on. All these guys' businesses were destroyed by crime, because what happened during the negotiations, negotiations, this communist started coming with communist policies, taking the eye of the ball of ensuring that you need a rule of law. I will supply goods to a guy in Soweto or in Tanzania or KZN. I can tell you, or Soshanguve, I'll supply the goods today to the guy. By the time I'm giving stock on credit to some of my big clients, I'll supply them with goods, maybe 80 or 100,000 rands worth of goods. The very same night I deliver, they will knock him out. He comes in the morning,
the extortion as well that's happening.
No, not extortion. That time was pure robbery.
Pure robbery.
He wakes up in the morning, the shop has been broken into, he loses everything. And one after the other, where I reached a stage where it was impossible for me to expose myself to these guys in these communities because the police were not interested. We'd report this to the ANC government. We thought we've got a black government controlling the police. They will assist us. Nothing happened. Look at my own factory, was burnt down on the 17th of November, 1993.
1993.
And it was arson. I remember a few days, the very same day that my factory went down, Titombo and Tabombeki came to my factory to sympathize.
To sympathize, moral support.
Moral support. But in terms of assisting, even up to today, to really get the people behind that assault, even up to today, there's never been any investigation. Now you can imagine a big industrial complex like that burned down by criminal elements. The ANC government was nowhere to be seen.
Nowhere to be seen at that time.
Up to today. People of Mabopani used to work in a factory, walk to this factory. We had massive activity. You can imagine a business of that size, trucks coming in to deliver bottles, chemicals, trucks coming in to collect stuff, the same. Because as we were producing, sending stock all over the country, railways was working at the time. Overnight, you destroy a business like that, and no government support.
No government support whatsoever.
So that's what really killed. So these guys in the townships, why they closed down their businesses, renting them out to foreigners, it's because they had no support. Someone steals from you. As a black business guy, you run a supermarket in the If someone steals from you, you don't have a professional HR practitioner and whatever. You fire the guy on the spot with all evidence. He takes you to the CCMA. The CCMA consults people. I can tell you, when you go to a CCMA, you are guilty. You have to go and prove yourself innocent.
Innocent.
So guys lost out. I mean, I know myself, luckily, because my business was so big, I could afford, once they started introducing these draconian laws, start now investing in HR department, get good labor lawyers to support us. You know, focusing on the business. That's what actually gave birth to today's labor brokers, because a lot of businesses couldn't handle this. People ended up outsourcing their businesses, including guys in the townships. Renting. It was easier to get a Pakistani to rent your business.
Come in and rent.
And then you don't have to really deal with this whole nonsense. But then what happens in the process? You kill black entrepreneurs. And then at the same time, they encourage people to go into tenders. So those crooks in the townships became councillors. And now that's when this tender system and corruption started. It was easier for someone to run from the business from his cell phone. He gets a corrupt tender from a corrupt ANC guys, and to get someone to supply, he makes a card, give a card to ANC councillor and the ANC itself. We've seen this developing in the last 30 years, and we started warning them about. Some of us started warning them about this, but they refused to listen. And even up to today, they're getting worse.
If you could look at, Mr. Mashaba, if I could take you back in the 1980s, I remember the apartheid government had a policy of giving large industrial companies tax breaks that were setting up factories in the former homelands, like Ciskei, Transkei as well, I think Bophuthatswana as well. And in some form of a way, that system maybe did work. Would you introduce something like that, whereby businesses, you are giving them concessions in order for them to go in some of these areas and, set up industrial, so that, we can boost industrialization in the country? That can also reduce urbanization as well. Would you favor such, or did you also benefit in such a scheme back in the day?
Well, I think as ActionSA, if you look at our approved policies, incentives to go and open those factories in Garangkua, Hammanskraal, in Twatwa, in KwaNdebele, without any doubt. The only way, those factories belong to us, people of South Africa. We've got over R1 trillion worth of factories. Half of them are more than half of them are lying empty. And right now, you can imagine a manufacturer in Germany, how much they've got to pay. Let's get those Germans, those Americans, the Chinese, let them come and set up factory in our country. They will obviously have to refurbish these factories. We will give them incentives based on how much. If we give you a 20,000 square meter factory that's lying empty, you don't have to pay rental. Tell us how much you're going to invest and how many people you're going to employ. Based on that, on the amount of investment and the number of people you are going to employ, we'll give you incentives so that you can recover your money. But you can imagine the impact on this. It'll give our people dignity to wake up. Right now, if you go to Hammanskraal, Garangkua, unemployment there is sitting at 60-70%. You can reduce unemployment to almost nothing. In the 70s, when I grew up and played dice when I was still at school, people who did not work in my community were those who did not want to work. I grew up in
the 70s.
In the 70s. People who did not work were those who did not want to work. South Africa was short of labor. Today, go to Hammanskraal. Honestly, 60-70% of the people are unemployed. But you've got a massive industrial area. Babelane is one of the biggest industrial areas in the country. It's lying more than half of those factories are empty. We have to be a nation of fools not to take advantage, to go on a tour, to start with South African companies, go to international companies. have teams of experts, let them go and get investments to come into this country. Let's give them incentives. We can say to you, you invest $5 billion, you employ 5,000 people, we'll give you 10 years, you don't have to pay tax. You can imagine people will have, because these factories, the only way you can work for them, they train you. So business people will ensure that people obviously are trained. No factory, once you have a full employment, people, no one can exploit you, because what happens if someone thinks that they can exploit you? I'm a living example of exploiting my employers. When I worked for SPA for 7 months, and I've shared this story many times all over the world, I'm one human being proud of having exploited my employers. When I worked for SPA, I wasn't working for SPA, I was working for myself. I did not once ask a SPA to give me a salary increase, but I will always make sure that I work hard. If they did not notice me, when they noticed me with SPA was the day I gave them my
resignation.
That's when they wanted to match 100 rands more than what Motani was offering me. And I said to the guys, how come all along you didn't notice me? This decision is not about you, it's about me. I'm moving on. And I did exactly the same thing with Motani. I managed to get the skills I needed. I could move from one business to the other. You see, when you have full employment, it gives us, the workers, a mobility that you cannot really be exploited by anyone. And I can tell you, it hurts businesses. Any businessman will be a fool to lose good people. No businessman in the world would lose good people.
Exactly.
And no clever, astute businessman would want to lose good people. It does not need government to tell you that I must look after Liletu. No. Me as a business person, because I invest in you to train you, and it takes years to train people to do their work. So I can't afford to lose people. So what I do, I take care of them. I don't need government. Whereas our government wants to determine how much people must be paid. And unfortunately, no business person anywhere in the world is going to be forced by government to pay what they cannot afford.
Exactly.
If government then forces me to pay people what I cannot afford, what do? I then don't employ them. Then you sit with 44% unemployment rate. Sustainable. South Africa is the country in the world with a sustainable unemployment rate in the world. You look at other countries, the employment rate keeps jumping up and down.
Ours is
South Africa, ours always going up. That's why it's known all over the world. You can check with IMF, with World Bank. South Africa's got the highest sustainable unemployment rate in the world, and you don't really have politicians with the will or the knowledge to know what to do. What they do, they focus on stealing and coming out with laws. Because every time coming out with ministries, every time the small businesses are under pressure, they start the Minister of Small Business. What do you need a Minister of Small Business for when you've got a Minister of Trade Industry? We run out of electricity, you have a Minister of Electricity. In the meantime, you've got Department of Public Enterprise and Energy. So that's what these people are up to. They have no idea, because all of them, they've never created anything in their lives.
So what you are saying, Mr. Mashaba, because the other thing that that really caught my eye within your manifesto is that you will be taking the old government buildings that are lying fallow and sort of refurbish them so that entrepreneurs could access the space in order to create value. And that was, that sort of sticked out for me, because obviously we know the massive cost in running a business is also the leasing as well, right? But I want to know, in your fund, right, how is this fund going to work? Because you said you will be creating a fund. Is it going to be offering...
We call it an opportunity fund.
Opportunity fund. Is it going to be creating debt funding or either equity? Because as well as we were talking, you said, look, sometimes when you were raising funds yourself, it was either debt or equity, or sometimes both. And is the opportunity fund going to what offering the lending is it gonna, the investment that it will offer? Is it debt or either equity?
They're lending to Black entrepreneurs, and this is going to be exclusive to Black, colored, and Indians, to those who were discriminated,
previously disadvantaged. Okay,
exclusively to them. And as part of the funding, no equity, and we will be cheaper rates and soft lending and lending criteria than what the banks. The banks will never really compete with us.
Okay.
In terms of assisting guys, because as ActionSA, all businesses in the townships and villages, the supermarkets and so forth, they're going to be run by South Africans. All these people who are in our country with no documentations, we don't know how they came into the country, we don't know how they brought money into the country, they are not registered with South African Revenue Services. They'll have to tell us, firstly, how they came into the country. Let's see, are you registered with South African Revenue Services? Tell us, Mr. So-and-so, how did the money come into the country? Did it come through mattress or sofas?
Like brother.
Find a gap in all this. We will close them down immediately, and these businesses will be run. We will put them on the market for local people to run these businesses, and then they can come to the fund to come for soft loans.
Okay, and the revenue source of that, is that coming from the taxpayers, or how are you going to generate funds for this fund? Where is it coming from?
And because it's as a result of us having taken a decision to, with immediate effect, if we were South Africans give us the mandate, we scrap triple B of 2004. We come out with our own policy called Inclusive Economic Empowerment. And within inclusive economic empowerment, we will then create this fund where companies are forced to pay 5% of their profits to this fund. And our economists have already done an exercise based on the current cost of B under the current B legislation. It's between 4% and 6%. So we charge you 5%, and you don't have to have all the requirements of people who are worrying you every day, who's going to be partner and so forth. Pay 5% of your profits. If you don't make profits, you don't pay anything. But one thing for sure, we'll put measures in place for those who would obviously play games with us. That as business, where you play around with your books and your auditors, it'll be the fine with penalties plus imprisonment, both.
Both.
We leave it to you. You must manage yourself. But the day when we can find that you are playing around with your books, and we can prove it beyond any reasonable doubt, when we do an investigation that you are hiding your profits, it's not going to only be a fine, it'll be fine plus a prison term.
So you are eradicating you are eradicating Black economic empowerment. I just want to ask.
No, we're not ready. This is Black economic empowerment, massive Black economic empowerment, not the one where you create oligarchs. We eradicating all the cadre deployment policy and creating oligarchs, people who have got no shame, driving 12 cars and so forth.
And they're still being called previously disadvantaged, even though they already have attained the wealth.
This fund is going to benefit an ordinary guy in Alexander, an ordinary guy in Soweto and Amanskral, because over and above that, we are going to invest in their education. Just today, we launched our how we're going to be funding students. No child in this country will have no access to tertiary education for financial reasons. This fund will be used to ensure that we help the kids with funding those that wants to pursue education. We will assist the black women in the townships, villages, or whatever, to set up proper ECD centers. The run as entrepreneurs to look after the children of families, but it must not just be a place where parents leave the child when they go to school. It must be a place where they nurture. ECD centers must be early childhood development center, so that by the time they get into the mainstream education, they can already read for meaning.
Okay, that's a great one, Mr. Mashaba. I just want to ask you a question on Black economic empowerment. And obviously, after 1994, a whole lot of white companies were actively looking for Black partners, but mostly the politically connected ones. You even saw Nail getting started around 1990. By Sanlam, led by Dr. Ntato Mutlana and other NAFCOC members as well. Where were you in this mix, Mr. Mashaba? And I'm sure you also benefited at the time, but after 1994, in some of these BEE empowerment schemes.
I remember the one meeting early before legislation was effected. I remember the one meeting I attended with Dr. Motlana and Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang with Sanlam. I was invited to that meeting. I was running my own business and just had to fire and whatever. Never really took interest. I didn't know what these people were talking about. The only time I actually started investing in B opportunities was when ordinary black, sort of white entrepreneurs that were looking for genuine black partners wanted someone with the money to invest in their businesses, because they were not just really looking for a black partner. It was obviously important that they comply with the laws, but then they were looking for someone who can bring in money so that they can expand their businesses. And that's when I started investing in such businesses. But I've always really been really very critical that this system it's not going to work, and we tried it. I don't think there's any normal South African who can tell me that the triple B of 2004 it's a good policy. It's not a good policy. It must be a policy that can be implementable. So any policy where the people will tell you, no, this policy is good, but the problem is the execution. If the policy cannot be properly executed, that means that policy is not good. That's why for us as ActionSA, don't talk about triple B of ANC. Let's talk about our own policy. What is called inclusive economic empowerment of black people.
Yes.
We want to empower the masses. Just to give you an example, if we continue with this ANC policy, tell me, Herman Mashaba's children, do they qualify to be part of B?
They currently do now, but obviously.
Let's look. No, I'm saying is let's look at it. I had this discussion, and sometimes with people who are advocating the continuation of this ANC policy, and I'm telling them, say, guys, tell me, Herman Mashaba's kids, do they qualify?
Do they qualify?
Because Herman Mashaba's kids are not disadvantaged.
Exactly, Mr. Mashaba. And that's what we have seen. That's why I also think that BEE was also a concession for white businesses to be in business, because if they could provide these share schemes for politicians, then the system would still remain the same. So I also do think it was also for a concession, because at the end of the day, you will be able to control policymakers if you also give them some concession on the private side.
I don't agree with it.
I do think so, because in 1910, Mr. Mashaba, if you could remember in 1910 settlements, the Afrikaners were also given concession by the British. to say, look, this is the concession. And now, as we know, the private sector always want to win the day. And that's why they probably gave the concession, because they wouldn't have given me those shares. They would give someone who's in power, who is able to give more wealth to them.
That's what I'm saying is related. When are we as a race going to take the responsibility? You can imagine, that's fine. Well, let's say if the white capital was their decision to empower these politicians. These politicians, being public servants, they went into politics because they had a social conscience. Why didn't they then use this white monopoly capital to go and empower their people? Instead of buying 10 cars and living a reckless life and going to destroy our families, some of them go and joll around with our kids at school. They are known as tigers. What I'm saying is, when are we going to, as a race, going to take the responsibility to say, absolutely, I'm going to take advantage of this. But what I will do, I will go and empower our people. Right now, what we do, we even go to an extent of putting money under mattresses, $4 million under mattresses. Can you imagine how many schools and hospitals you can build with $4 million?
Exactly.
So what I'm trying to say is that we can't always be saying white people are red fault. Why can't we be strategic to say, no, that's fine. I don't have the money. I will take from this guy. And we'll use this money to go and empower our people.
Exactly, Mr. Mashaba.
I can tell you, let me give you an example. Please, when do a study of Lucas Mangope and Boputatswana. For me, it's a clear, real typical case study. I'm telling you, I grew up in that area in Boputatswana. We used to hate Mangope. I never knew them. I've never met Lucas Mangope in my life. But if I look at what I know now, if I knew then, I can tell you, look at Lucas Mangope. The development of
the development as it was there.
He did with a small budget that he was getting from the National Party. So what he did, he accepted this. But what he did, he empowered his own people.
He's empowered. Exactly. I want to talk more about a bit about the state-owned enterprises as well, Mr. Mashaba, because we have seen how they are failing. I mean, the rolling blackouts that we're having, that's decimating, businesses by the hour. Transnet, quite a whole lot of farmers are losing export opportunities because of that. What is your solution to the state-owned enterprise problem? Will you want to partially privatize them, or would you want to keep it as it is, solely owned by the state? What is the ActionSA solution with our state-owned enterprises? Because they are currently a massive liability in our economy.
Yeah, well, some of them, for an example, South African Airways, I can tell you overnight, if ActionSA has got a mandate, ActionSA will pay someone to take it over. What we need an airline for. We're not in the business of running airlines. We'll pay someone to keep the SA brand, because that brand is it's something. But we take it off the government balance sheet so that we don't have the liability, the bailout, and so forth.
So you won't even contain a share, even if it's 25%.
If I maintain a share, that means if they lose money, I've got to keep chipping in. Instead of building schools for people of Amanskral also, then I must chip in. No, I don't want government to not really have shares in an airline. We're not in an airline business. Well, the government's role is to build roads or build the infrastructure to ensure that public transport, efficient one, subsidized heavily. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, trains. I gave you an example. Growing up, people used to buy monthly tickets or weekly tickets for 7 days, but they work 5 days. I mean, those tickets are next to nothing. And as school-going kids, will use that ticket on a Saturday and Sunday. And you know what? Coming here to Johannesburg, I'll take a train from Amanskral to Pretoria, take a train, take a bus from Barabastad in Pretoria to Alexander. Every half an hour, there was a bus, hardcore bus running between Pretoria every day, every half an hour, heavily subsidized. When you get to Pan Africa in Alexander, I'll tell you, every 5 minutes, there's a bus leaving to North Street. Heavily subsidized. You go to Soweto, then immediately get into Soweto. Every 10, 15 minutes, there's a train going to Naledi or going to Mansfield site. And when you get to Mansfield, there's a Padco bus that will take you to White City or where I was going. You know, government needs to invest in that infrastructure that benefits the masses. You subsidize the poor people, not subsidize oligarchs. Oligarchs to buy shares in companies, because when they buy the shares in companies, they don't put money back into the system. Tell me how many oligarchs that you know that have invested in a factory like I did in 1980.
Exactly.
Show me one.
No, they more. I don't know. I think the system really created non-entrepreneurs. That's why it's like an oligarch system that promotes proximity than actually entrepreneurship. And you went through the part, you've built massive businesses, and you are an entrepreneur. I think you're more of an entrepreneur than a politician. But I do think that the current system doesn't it promotes proximity, who I know rather than what I know.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say, SOEs like Transnet and Prasa, those ones we need to really keep them. But what you
the
do,
infrastructure ones.
Yeah, put in professional people to run them. You put them on terms. You run business. If you can't deliver, you're out. No cadres. People must be appointed on merit. ESCOM must be able to run on a professional basis, but immediately open the market to the private sector.
Okay, so you want to cut the red tape.
Yeah, let ESCOM compete. If they are unable to compete, if they die, they must die natural death. As long as South Africans can get cheap electricity from the market. Because if you've got an open market system, the electricity prices are going to come down. Look at the increases that we get from ESCOM. Every year we get less electricity, but the rates, we get double-digit inflation increase every year for the last, 10, 15 years?
For 10, 15 years. So you're going to cut down the monopoly and open up the market. So we'll have electricity markets.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, look at right now how irresponsible these guys are. The house I'm talking to right now, where I live, you know, I've got my own electricity. I generate my own electricity.
Yeah.
But during the day when it's a hot day like this, I generate much more than what my batteries can take. So the city of Joburg, I engaged them, but unfortunately the law, from what I say, does not allow them. That during the day, I can sell them electricity that they can go and sell to 2, 3 other houses, which does not have
exactly.
does not have the capacity. So basically what happens in a country like South Africa, we are wasting electricity. I mean, I know in my house, I don't get affected by load shedding, but it has to be that during the day, I look at my system and my usage.
Yes,
I generate more than what I use. So you can imagine if the city was buying this and go and sell it to someone who does not really have the infrastructure.
Exactly. Because the capacity, I mean, you've got excess capacity. Why can't you pass it over to someone else for a profit, Mr. Mashaba?
No, I don't have to sell it at a profit. No, I don't have to sell it at. They can offer us any amount because it's a wasted energy. Because I don't have space to keep to buy more batteries and keep this electricity for forward. I don't need it. You know, so exactly. I'm saying is let the city buy this electricity at whatever price. But what is important is not about the price. It's about buying this electricity go and sell it to someone who does not have the infrastructure instead of having the shutdown.
The shutdown. I want to go more into politics, Mr. Mashaba. But firstly, obviously, I want to go to the multi-party charter that ActionSA is part of. What is the main interest of ActionSA in that grouping? Because I can look at the multi-party charter as being also a hedge for the Democratic Alliance for potential losses, because I see they're a bit shaken with this one, the up and coming elections. What is the main interest of ActionSA in that grouping?
Well, I can tell you for us, and I've said this from day one, that ActionSA is in the multi-party charter as an insurance policy. In the event we don't get outright majority, I'm clear. I've been clear about this. I did not hide my agenda because I've accepted that South Africa has entered an era of politics. But we want the South Africans to give us outright majority. Is it possible? I think I'll be asking too much. We're a 3.5-year-old party. There are millions of people who've never heard of a name called ActionSA today as I speak to you. So for us, it's actually, if the DA is thinking that they're hedging, I can tell you I've hedged more than they did.
Yeah, no, that's great. So with how has the traction been with ActionSA? I know obviously your stronghold is Gauteng, but how's your traction been in other provinces around South Africa? I'm here in Dilapha Kapa in the Western Cape. How's your traction this side?
Well, let you. If you think we surprised South Africa with our performance in 2021 elections, I can tell you, wait until you see our performance throughout all the 9 provinces. I can tell you without any shade of doubt that ActionSA is going to emerge as the biggest surprise. Much bigger than what we contested with. Remember, in 2021, we were a year old under lockdown, IEC playing a dirty one against us, making us contest as a logo. But we emerged. Are you aware we are officially the 6th biggest political party in South Africa? Only contested 6 municipalities out of 278, but we are officially the 6th biggest political party. We are the 4th biggest political party in Gauteng. We contested 3 municipalities out of 9. We are the 4th biggest political party.
That's
so
great.
Now this time we are going to contest every province. We are going to contest every ward, every VD station throughout the country. Just under 25,000 voting stations. ActionSA representatives are going to be there. We've got 9 excellent premier candidates. As I'm talking to you right now, please just go into the Western Cape social media platforms. Look at how many branches our teams are doing. Even with the rain and not just in the Western Cape, here in Gauteng, KZN, everywhere. I think we up to last Monday. You remember in 2021 when we contest, we did not have branches then because of a 1-year-old party with a lockdown and so forth. We couldn't get a group of people together. Right now, as I'm talking to you, by last Monday, not this past Monday, 2 weeks ago Monday, we already have branches in 52% of the wards throughout the country.
Wow.
Sure. And our target to all our structures, we get the report on our team gets a report on a weekly basis. But obviously, they report to us on a regular basis when we have a Senate meeting. I can tell you, our target is to have 60% of the wards covered by the time we go to the elections on the 29th.
On the 29th.
9th of May.
That's really great traction, Mr. Mashaba. So you highly confident about the up and coming election that you will be doing great, and yeah.
I don't have to play around with polls and mislead society. I deal with real stuff. But the information I'm giving you, going to the IEC website, look at how we've performed in rural areas. Up to now, we've contested 9 by-elections in Limpopo, in KZN, in the Eastern Cape. Look at how we've performed. Everywhere we've contested in the 9 by-elections. In the suburbs, we are always number 2.
You're always number 2 in the suburbs.
Is the DA and us coming, and we drop them big time. And the ANC and EFF don't exist in the suburbs.
In the suburban areas.
And then you go into the townships. Going to the townships. If we are not number 2, we are number 3. Dropping ANC and EFF, we are number 3. And there's no DA in the townships.
There's no DA.
So we're the only party that has got the support. We've made history as a party. We are a party that appeals to South Africans across
there. And it's for all South Africans, you say, Mr. Mashaba.
And unapologetic about it. We're a party for South Africans. I made it clear when I launched ActionSA on the 29th of August 2020. I said, anyone who's looking for a racial party, please don't waste our time. Go somewhere else.
And Mr. Mashaba, how has the synergy, because ActionSA is a multiracial party, which is good, and it shows the demographics of the country as well. But how has the synergies, in working together and formulating this organization? And obviously, other members maybe are coming. You guys. Some of you coming from the DA, maybe you've got others that are coming from EFF. So it's a tossed salad. But how has it been working the synergies and the ideology?
What I told you, what my grandfather taught me when I was still young, that the life is not easy, it's full of challenges. What you do as a human species, God has given you this little brain to use to navigate your challenges. I had an Afrikaner partner in 1984. In 1985, when I started Black Like Me, I had an Afrikaner from Boksburg as an equal partner in my business.
Your business. Yeah, Mr. Mashaba. And you moved in the white suburbs in the apartheid days. I'm sure you could afford like a massive mansion at that time. How was that like? Just diverting from politics again.
Obviously, after starting Black Like Me, I first bought my house for cash in Unit 8 in Harangua, and immediately built a double garage and rooms for our helpers, and put in a wall. I did not owe anyone a cent. And then I built a house, a double-storied house in Soshanguve with a tennis court.
Sure. With a tennis court in Soshanguve. Yeah.
I bought 2 stands. One stand full professional golf. Tennis court. We used to hold tournaments with other guys from different places.
Different places.
Yeah, no. I had a double-storied house in Soshanguve with a swimming pool. Before I reached stage.
Yeah, before you reached that. But how was it like with how it is when you are in business and you're making money and you're having family members that are coming? How was it that like? I'm sure you had a lot of family members coming to you for assistance.
Yeah, well, one thing I've learned as a person, and I think I'm really grateful to my family. We've always been a family that is capitalist in our nature, but we can only have 2-3 meals at the most a day. And whatever we cannot spend ourselves, we always share it with other people. And that's been our natures as a family over the years. So we don't mind to help as long as people don't abuse us, because we are always wary and vigilant against those that obviously wants to abuse us. If I look at my family's track record over the last 40 years, I don't know how many Black people who are today doctors, engineers, lawyers, accountants. If you can run a survey, ask the people who are assisted by my business over the last 30 years. Let's see if what number you will get. We've always assisted, but we assist people with the money that we
make out of the profits.
And we don't do it because we are forced to. We do it because it's the right thing to do. It's for that reason my family allowed me to use my privileged position, because if I was someone who was a coward or someone with no conscience, I can tell you, I would have gone to live in the United States. I can go and live in the States and go and play golf in Florida.
But Florida.
Not that, because I have a conscience and I'm saying to myself, if not me, who? And I believe I have an obligation, a moral obligation. I don't have a legal obligation. I have a moral obligation to do my best. And I went into politics precisely to see if we can democratically stop this decay in the rot. And yeah, so my family put in, as you can imagine, how much money we've put into to start this organization.
I can imagine.
Luckily in the process, when people realize what we're doing, and other South Africans started coming to help us. But my family underwrote this whole project from day one.
And the other thing, Mr. Mashaba, what I've noticed with you, you've made so much wealth, but you really you are a frugal person. With what I can and see, and you always are keeping the cost low. I mean, I haven't seen even ActionSA headquarters, so the way in which you control the cost, is that coming from the business side, always controlling expenses, but also doing big things while you're doing that? I think a lot of us can learn from that, because when we start our businesses, we want to be seen, and you find that the costs outweigh the revenues, and this thing stops again, and then you have to start again. You see, so that is the challenge.
It's interesting question you're asking, because a lot of people don't believe, even a big number, more than half of our members don't know that ActionSA does not have offices. I'm talking from my house. Earlier on, I had a meeting with a group of my guys from all over the country through using this kind of media platform. Every time I want to have an agent meeting with 2-3 guys, one in Polokwane, it's just say, guys, can we have a Zoom meeting at this particular time? I don't need two offices, And I look at my investment company that I started, the Party Investments. You look at the offices. I ran that business, even my wife, even today, ran with only 4 people. In a rented space where we had with right now take advantage of office space available. We negotiate for this thing. We don't have to have Mashaba house or have. We don't need that nonsense. Their role there is to make money. Here with ActionSA is to make an impact in society, but I've got to keep our costs down. Every cent that I get must go towards ensuring that our 290 volunteers all over the country, they've got the tools of trade. I've got to buy them T-shirts, with some merchandise. They need pamphlets. They need sometimes money to eat or transport and so forth. That's where the money must go. What do I need offices for?
No, I see. And I think that is also going to trickle to government as well, because we've got a bloated bureaucracy in South Africa. I'm sure you will cut down and resize government so that more of these funds can be allocated in infrastructure development and so on. What is your analysis on that?
Well, let me give you a practical example. I ran as the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg for 3 years. In the 3 years, I managed savings of 2 billion rands. You can check that with the auditor. 2 billion rands of savings. Let me tell you, just to give you simple examples that you can easily understand. When I became a mayor on the 22nd of August, 2 days later, I wake up in the morning, I see in the morning when I open my front door, lots of papers being delivered. My goodness, what the hell is this? So when I get to the office as the city manager, what's happening? Newspapers are delivered. The city was spending 18 million a year
on just newspapers.
What the hell? So I said to the city manager, Mr. Trevor Fowler, I said, Trevor, tell me what time with the work that you're doing, will anyone ever get a chance to read all those papers? Africa's papers, New Age. Lucky there was this contract was run on a month-to-month basis. Arranged that it must be immediately cancelled.
Immediately cancelled.
I said, please cancel this nonsense. If anyone wants to read papers, they must read them, but they're not coming to work to read papers. I'm going to do spot checks. We're not employing people to read papers when we've got such a huge backlog. We had 170 billion rands worth of infrastructure backlog in the city. So people must focus on their jobs. Secondly, in my office, and then I look at all the senior managers in the city. They've got the full-blown DSTV bouquet.
Sure.
At a cost of just under $1 million a month.
No,
it's not a movie, I'm telling you.
Sure, it was like Christmas there.
Now, tell me, how many people can afford the full bouquet of DSTV? Tell me, when are people, they've got to read papers, they've got to watch whatever. And also that one was running on a month-to-month basis. Thirdly, because when we took over, ANC had already passed the budget because Pakistan, we never thought he was going to lose. They had budget of 76 million rands on international travel.
Wow.
76 million rands. And just the mayor's office, 27 million rands.
27 million rands. Sure.
Yeah. You know how much we spent the first year?
How much did you spend on travel?
I spent nothing. Never undertook a single first year. Never undertook. And then as we went to the city manager, I said, Trevor, I see there's 76 million rands of international travel in this budget. And look, I can't stop people from traveling, obviously, if it's for business purposes and whatever. The only thing I request, please, can I please arrange that every international travel to be brought to my office for final signature so that I know where people are going. You know what? We spent 3.6 million rands the first year, from 76 million.
From 76 million.
76 million.
So these things can be changed overnight, Mr. Mashaba, with correct leadership.
These are things that I'm saying is, and now you can imagine at the national level.
That's it. I'm sure.
Pakistan in 2016, when he was competing, spent over 300 million rands on self-promotion. Every time they passes a budget to take adverts in all the newspapers, whatever, 300 million rands.
But when you cut the cost, don't you upset some other service providers and so on? How does that work?
And media houses were not happy with me because we can imagine.
And they start writing bad about you on the
media. You know what? It's about public monies. I don't care. And you remember when I was the mayor, how brutal the media was against me, saying they're calling me xenophobic, and they unleashed. They were calling me xenophobic. They were saying that I'm getting rid of experienced people because I immediately introduced a skills audit to make sure that we've got the right people holding positions.
Holding the position.
Yeah. And then obviously ANC cadres started running. Some of them fired them because they were in the job for the wrong reasons. And the media used to criticize me that I'm getting rid of experienced people. I said, no, I'm not getting rid of experienced people. I'm getting rid of experienced crooks and thieves.
Yeah, it is like that. But obviously, I do think that that decisive leadership is needed in the country in order to move. But Mr. Mashaba, when you look at South Africa, what are you optimistic about our country? Are you optimistic about our country? What is? Are you optimistic about the future? I know you've taken such a tough job in being a, a party leader, but how is your optimism levels in the country?
Well, the reason why I've taken this job is because I believe South Africa can still be saved and it can still be fixed. But ultimately, the decision lies with the black population and black voters, because black voters are the ones to decide the future of this country. We live in a democratic dispensation, and no one can govern in this country without getting the mandate of the black voters. So the future really belongs to them. So my role is to try and obviously wake them up to the reality of what might happen in the event we continue with this corrupt government, or they must really look at an alternative, because people are staying away from voting because they say there's no alternative. So we're trying to sell ourselves to them, but it's not something that you can achieve overnight. We're only 3.5-year-old party. So let's hope that our messaging will resonate with the black voters, because they're the ones ultimately who are going to decide whether South Africa becomes a failed state or we become a nation where in 30 years' time we can be a proud race that we rose from the ashes of ANC 30 years.
But how has it? I'm sure it has been difficult, though, trying to change the black vote, in particular in township communities, especially introducing, these capitalist policies that ActionSA has. I'm sure that has been a bit difficult.
Let you. In 2021,
pro-open market system, not.
Let me give you reality, not ideology. In 2021, as a logo, 1-year-old party, for the first time, we dropped ANC support from 76 to 59% in Soweto. First party to get 22% of Soweto voters. Followed by the EFF 10-year-old party that fills the stadium every week at 14%. We are almost double the EFF in Soweto, So, and now look at the by-elections. You're going to our website or going to IEC, maybe you can get the reliable information. We'll look at how we're performing in villages, in townships, in informal settlements. Has it been easy? Nothing is easy in life, but our policies resonate with the lived experience of people. Go and tell people also about current BE policy. Don't tell them about that nonsense, because what have they seen? The only thing that they've seen is poverty and poverty. They see this entrepreneurs and oligarchs splashing money like they've never seen
nothing else. No, thank you, but thank you very much, Mr. Mashaba. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I hope you do come to the studio here so that we can do a physical interview. But obviously, I know you've got a busy schedule. But I really appreciated this interview. You really inspire me. That's why I was fighting with Mr. Trollop that Mr. Trollop, please. I need to speak to Mr. Mashaba, but thank you very much, Ntate
and thank you so much.
Thank you.
All of the best.
Thank you very much.